On a quiet street in a small town lived a young man named Daniel. Daniel was known by everyone as the boy who always sat by the old wooden bench near the train station. Every evening, as the sun slowly disappeared behind the hills, Daniel would sit there, watching the trains come and go. But he wasn't waiting for a train. He was waiting for someone. Years earlier, Daniel had met a girl named Clara. She had just moved into town and worked at the small bookstore near the station. Clara loved books, music, and long walks under the evening sky. Daniel met her on a rainy afternoon. He had rushed into the bookstore to escape the rain, and there she was, standing behind the counter with a warm smile. "Looking for something special?" she asked. Daniel nervously replied, "Maybe. I just haven't found it yet." Clara laughed softly. From that moment, everything changed. Daniel began visiting the bookstore every day. At first, he pretended to look for books. But in truth, he just wanted to see Clara. Soon, they began talking. About dreams. About the future. About the places they wished to travel. Sometimes after closing the bookstore, they would walk together to the train station and sit on the old wooden bench. Clara loved trains. She said trains reminded her that the world was full of possibilities. "Every train is a new story," she once told Daniel. Daniel would simply smile, because for him, the best story was sitting right beside him. Months passed, and their friendship slowly turned into something deeper. But Daniel had one problem. He was afraid. Afraid to tell Clara how much he loved her. So instead of speaking the words, he wrote them in a letter. He spent hours writing that letter. He wrote about the first day he saw her. He wrote about how her laughter made the whole world feel brighter. And he wrote the 3 words he was too afraid to say out loud. "I love you." Daniel planned to give her the letter the next evening at the train station. But that evening never happened. The next day, Daniel arrived at the bookstore and found it closed. A small note was taped to the door. "Closed for travel." Confused, Daniel asked the nearby shop owner. "Oh," the man said, "didn't you hear? Clara moved away this morning. She left on the early train." Daniel felt his heart sink. She was gone, and he never gave her the letter. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. But Daniel kept the letter. He carried it everywhere. Years passed, and life slowly moved on. Daniel found work, made new friends, and tried to forget. But every evening, he still visited the train station, and he still sat on the old wooden bench. One evening, many years later, something unexpected happened. A train arrived, just like always. Passengers stepped off one by one. And then, Daniel saw a familiar face. It was Clara, older now, but unmistakably the same. She looked around the station, and her eyes stopped on Daniel. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Clara smiled softly. "I wondered if you'd still be here," she said. Daniel stood, speechless. Finally, he managed to ask, "Why did you come back?" Clara reached into her bag and pulled out an old envelope. It looked worn and slightly faded. "I came back for this," she said. Daniel recognized it instantly. It was his letter. His eyes widened. "But I never gave it to you." Clara nodded. "You didn't," she said gently. "But you dropped it the day you came to the bookstore." She smiled. "I found it on the floor after you left." Daniel felt his heart race. "You read it?" he asked. Clara laughed softly. "Of course I did." Daniel looked down, embarrassed. "So, why did you leave?" he asked quietly. Clara looked toward the sunset. "I had to move from my family," she explained. "But I kept your letter all these years." She looked back at him. "And every time life became difficult, I would read it again." Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. "So why come back now?" he asked. Clara stepped closer. "Because I realized something," she said. Daniel waited. Clara smiled warmly. "You wrote that you loved me," she said. "Yes," Daniel replied softly. "Well," she continued, "I came back to tell you. I loved you too." The train station grew quiet as the sun dipped below the horizon. Daniel laughed for the first time in years. 7 years late, he said. Clara shrugged playfully. Some stories just take longer to arrive. And together, they sat once again on the old wooden bench, watching the trains pass by. But this time, neither of them was waiting anymore. Because sometimes, love doesn't disappear. Sometimes, It simply takes the long way home.